The evening rush at Bellini's was in full swing as Lily hurried between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. The restaurant hummed with the clink of expensive silverware and the murmur of conversations that floated up toward the crystal chandeliers. Tucked in the corner sat a magnificent grand piano, its polished surface catching the amber glow of the mood lighting. Most nights it remained untouched, a beautiful decoration rather than an instrument meant to be played. Lily tucked a strand of hair behind her ear as she delivered a plate of truffle risotto to table 7. "Careful, the plate is hot," she warned with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind that smile hid exhaustion from working double shifts all week, and the weight of overdue bills stacked on her kitchen counter. 6 years ago, she'd arrived in the city with a duffel bag full of sheet music and dreams of attending the prestigious Westmore Conservatory of Music. Now, at 25, those dreams had faded into something more distant, like stars that appeared bright from afar but dimmed the closer you tried to get. "Miss, we're still waiting on those drinks." A man at table 12 raised his hand impatiently. "Coming right up, sir. Sorry for the delay." Lily hurried toward the bar, mentally calculating how much of tonight's tips would go toward her electric bill versus her student loans. As she waited for the bartender to finish the drink order, her fingers unconsciously tapped out Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major on the bar counter. Music had always been like that for her, finding ways to escape through her fingertips even when there wasn't a keyboard beneath them. Dreaming again? Miguel, the bartender, slid the tray of drinks toward her with a knowing look. They'd started at Bellini's around the same time, and he was one of the few people who knew about her abandoned musical aspirations. "Just keeping my fingers limber," she replied with a half-smile. "For all those big concerts I'll never play. Hey, you never know. Maybe tonight's the night some big-shot producer walks in and discovers you." Lily laughed. "Sure, and maybe I'll win the lottery on my way home, too." 4 martinis for table 12, Miguel announced, placing the last glass on her tray. Lily carefully balanced the heavy tray on her palm and made her way back across the dining room. That's when she noticed the commotion near the entrance. Richard, the host, was fawning over a group of new arrivals, a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit surrounded by 4 others who seemed to hang on his every word. "Mr. Chen, what an unexpected pleasure," Richard gushed. "We weren't aware you'd be joining us tonight." "Last-minute decision," the man replied casually, as if spontaneously deciding to dine at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants was perfectly normal. "I trust you can find us a suitable table?" Richard's eyes darted around the fully booked dining room. "Of course, Mr. Chen. We'll make arrangements immediately." Lily recognized the name instantly. Daniel Chen, tech entrepreneur and venture capitalist whose face regularly appeared in business magazines. Rumored net worth somewhere north of $2 billion. He'd made his fortune developing a revolutionary payment processing system, and now spent his time investing in startups and, apparently, causing restaurant staff to scramble. She delivered the martinis to table 12 just as Richard approached Paolo, the floor manager. "We need to prepare the owner's table for Mr. Chen and his associates," Richard whispered urgently. Paolo's eyes widened. "It's not set up. We weren't expecting, well, expect it now, and we need their best server." Paolo scanned the room, his gaze landing on Lily as she efficiently cleared empty plates from another table. "Lily, come here, please." She finished stacking the dishes and hurried over. "Yes?" Daniel Chen just walked in with 4 guests. "They'll be at the owner's table." "You're taking care of them tonight?" Lily felt her stomach tighten. The owner's table was reserved for the most elite clientele, people who expected nothing short of perfection. One mistake could mean not only losing valuable tips but possibly her job. "But I already have 6 tables," she protested quietly. "I'll redistribute them. This is priority." Paolo's tone made it clear the discussion was over. These people can make or break our reputation with a single social media post. "Understand?" Lily nodded, smoothing down her black apron. "Understood." Within minutes, the owner's table was prepared, the best spot in the house with a view of both the city skyline and, ironically, the grand piano. As Chen and his entourage settled in, Lily approached with professional poise. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Bellini's. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Daniel Chen barely glanced up from his phone. The man to his right, younger, with designer glasses and an eager expression, spoke instead. Mr. Chen would like the 2010 Chateau Margaux to start. Bring 2 bottles. Lily nodded, making a mental note of the 1-200 per bottle wine selection. Excellent choice. Would you like to hear about our specials this evening? That won't be necessary, another man from the group interjected. We'll start with your full caviar service and the chef's tasting menu. Very good. I'll place that order right away and return with your wine. As Lily walked away, she could feel the weight of the evening ahead. VIPs like Chen typically stayed for hours, demanded constant attention, and scrutinized every detail of service. Tonight would be a marathon, not a sprint. In the wine cellar, she carefully selected the requested bottles, her mind drifting to the irony of handling wine worth more than her monthly rent. 6 years ago, she'd been practicing piano 8 hours daily, preparing for conservatory auditions. Her teacher had called her gifted, a natural talent that came along rarely. Then life happened. Mom's illness, the medical bills, the need for a steady income rather than an uncertain musical future. Now, instead of coaxing beautiful sounds from ivory keys, she uncorked expensive bottles for people who would never know or care about her shattered dreams. When she returned to the table, the conversation was animated, focused on investment opportunities and market predictions. She poured the wine with practiced precision, careful not to interrupt. The AR healthcare interface is revolutionary, the youngest man was saying enthusiastically. Early test results show a 40% reduction in diagnostic errors. Chen swirled his wine thoughtfully. Impressive, if accurate. But I've heard similar claims before. This is different, insisted the man. The neural network? We can discuss technical details later, Chen cut him off, finally noticing Lily. This wine needs to breathe more. And we'll need still water, no ice. Right away, sir. The next hour passed in a blur of demands and special requests. The caviar needed to be replaced because it wasn't cold enough. One guest required a special preparation not on the menu. Another complained about the lighting being too dim, then too bright after it was adjusted. Through it all, Lily maintained her composure, even as her other tables were redistributed to already busy colleagues who shot her occasional resentful glances. This wasn't their fault, but restaurant hierarchy was clear. Chen's table took priority. During a rare moment of calm, as the guests were occupied with their main courses, Lily stood near the service station, rolling her sore shoulders. The piano in the corner caught her eye, as it often did during quiet moments. Sometimes after closing, when the cleaning crew was working, she would sit there and play softly, pieces from memory, fragments of the life she'd once imagined. You look like you could use a break, commented Wei, another server, as he arranged dessert plates. Just 5 minutes without someone snapping their fingers at me would be nice, Lily admitted. Chen's party? She nodded. He was in last month too. Left a decent tip but made Angela cry when he sent back his steak 3 times. Lily winced. Great, something to look forward to. As if on cue, she noticed Chen gesturing for her. She quickly made her way back to the table. Is everything to your satisfaction, gentlemen? We'll need another round of drinks, Chen said without looking up from the document his associate was showing him on a tablet. And tell the chef the lamb is acceptable, but not exceptional. I'll pass that along, sir. As Lily turned to leave, a soft melody caught her attention, coming from her own lips. She hadn't even realized she was humming. It was a habit when she was stressed, her mind seeking comfort in music. One of Chen's guests looked up. That's Rachmaninoff, isn't it? Piano concerto numero 2. Lily felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. Yes, sorry about that. Don't apologize, the man said with genuine interest. Are you a musician? Before she could answer, Chen interrupted. We're discussing a $50 million investment, not auditioning for the orchestra. The drinks, please. Right away, sir. As she walked away, Lily felt a familiar ache in her chest, the pain of a passion pushed aside, of being seen only as someone who carried plates and poured wine, rather than the musician she still was in her heart. But tonight wasn't about her dreams. It was about surviving another shift, earning enough tips to chip away at her debts, and hopefully having enough energy left to practice on her electronic keyboard with headphones once she got home to her tiny apartment. The grand piano continued to gleam in the corner, silent and waiting, while Lily returned to the demands of the evening and the imperious tech millionaire, who had no idea that the woman serving his wine could make that instrument sing in ways that could break hearts and heal them all at once. Neither of them knew that in less than an hour, everything would change. The next hour at Bellini's unfolded in a whirlwind of demands from Chen's table. Lily's feet ached as she made her 15th trip to the kitchen, this time to request a specific preparation of the chocolate soufflé that wasn't on the menu. The chef's expression had grown increasingly irritated with each special request, but nobody said no to Daniel Chen. "Another modification?" Chef Anthony asked, his knife pausing mid-chop. "Last one, hopefully," Lily replied, offering an apologetic smile. "Table wants the chocolate soufflé with raspberries instead of the traditional preparation." The chef sighed heavily. "Fine. 10 minutes. "Thanks, chef, I owe you." As Lily waited for the desserts, she leaned against the cool tile wall and closed her eyes for just a moment. The restaurant's playlist had shifted to a classical piece, Debussy's Clair de Lune, and her fingers instinctively began to move, playing along with invisible keys. The gentle melody had been one of her mother's favorites. "You still remember that one, huh?" Miguel appeared beside her, carrying a tray of clean glasses. Lily opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "Some things you never forget, like riding a bike? More like breathing," she admitted quietly. The kitchen doors swung open as another server hurried in. "Lily, Chen's asking for you again. Doesn't look happy." Lily straightened her posture and smoothed her apron. Of course he isn't. When she returned to the dining room, the atmosphere at Chen's table had noticeably shifted. Empty wine bottles stood as evidence of their consumption, and voices had grown louder. Chen himself seemed more animated than earlier, gesturing broadly as he spoke about some technological breakthrough his company was developing. "Mr. Chen." Lily approached the table carefully. "Your desserts will be out shortly. Was there something else you needed?" Chen turned toward her, his gaze sharper than before. "Yes, your attention. We've been waiting for fresh drinks for 15 minutes. Lily blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, sir, but no one ordered." "I shouldn't have to order," he interrupted, his voice carrying enough that nearby diners glanced over. "You should be anticipating our needs. Isn't that what they pay you for?" One of his associates, the one who had recognized Rachmaninoff earlier, looked uncomfortable. "Daniel, she's been perfectly attentive all evening." Chen waved his hand dismissively. "That's not the point, Thomas. Excellence isn't just meeting expectations, it's exceeding them. Something I've built my entire career on understanding." Lily maintained her professional composure, though her cheeks burned with humiliation. "I'll get your drinks immediately. What would you prefer?" "Scotch. The 25-year Macallan." Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "And why were you humming again?" "I've noticed you doing it several times tonight." The question caught her off guard. "I'm sorry if it bothered you. Sometimes I don't realize I'm doing it." "It's Debussy playing over the speakers," offered Thomas, the music-knowledgeable guest. She was humming along perfectly in tune, actually. Chen's attention shifted fully to Lily now, his business discussion temporarily forgotten. The alcohol had clearly lowered his inhibitions, making him more direct and less concerned with social niceties. "So you're what? Some kind of music expert serving tables?" "No, sir. Just someone who enjoys music," a dismissive snort. "There's a difference between enjoying something and understanding it. I enjoy the view from my penthouse, but that doesn't make me an architect." The other men at the table chuckled, though Thomas remained silent. Lily felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach, the same feeling she'd had years ago when her father had dismissed her musical ambitions as nice hobbies, but not real career material. She had two choices: nod politely and retreat to get their drinks, or stand her ground. Tonight, with double shifts, aching feet, and the weight of another rejected job application to the City Symphony's administrative department, something in her refused to shrink away. "With respect, Mr. Chen, understanding music and enjoying it aren't mutually exclusive. One can do both." The table fell silent. Even Chen looked momentarily surprised at her response. "Is that so?" he finally said, leaning back in his chair. His eyes moved deliberately toward the grand piano in the corner, then back to her. "You seem very confident about music for someone carrying trays for a living." Paolo, who had been monitoring the situation from nearby, stepped closer with a nervous smile. "Mr. Chen, I apologize if there's been any misunderstanding. I'll personally ensure—" "No." Chen held up his hand, stopping Paolo mid-sentence. "I'm curious now." He turned back to Lily. "Tell me, what exactly do you know about music that makes you qualified to lecture me on it?" The restaurant had grown quieter, nearby conversations diminishing as people sensed the tension unfolding. Lily could feel multiple sets of eyes on her, including those of her coworkers. "I wasn't lecturing, sir. Just that piano over there," Chen interrupted, pointing to the magnificent instrument that had been silent all evening. "Do you know why restaurants like this have them?" When Lily didn't immediately respond, he continued, "They're status symbols, decorations, like the artwork on these walls or the chandeliers above us, meant to create an atmosphere of sophistication that justifies charging $75 for a steak." He took another sip of wine before continuing, "I'd bet that no one who works here can actually play it properly. It's just for show, like so many things in life." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Daniel, perhaps we should return to discussing the healthcare interface." "No, I'm making a point here," Chen insisted, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. "About authenticity. About the difference between appearance and substance." Lily felt her hands trembling slightly and clasped them behind her back. 6 years of suppressed passion and disappointment threatened to spill over. She thought of the countless nights she'd fallen asleep with sheet music scattered across her bed. The competition she'd won as a teenager. The standing ovation at her final recital before life intervened and changed everything. "That piano is not just for show. Mr. Chen, at least it shouldn't be." Chen's eyebrows raised slightly, and the hint of a smirk played at his lips. "Strong opinions from someone who I'm guessing has never touched an instrument like that." Several emotions flashed across Lily's face: hurt, anger, and finally, a strange sort of clarity. For years she'd kept her past as a promising pianist buried, as if hiding her true self would somehow make the pain of abandoning that dream easier to bear. But standing here now, being dismissed by a man who knew nothing about her, something shifted inside. Chen seemed to interpret her silence as confirmation. He turned to his associates. "See? I'll talk. I studied piano for 15 years, Lily said quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I was accepted to 3 music conservatories before personal circumstances changed my path." The table went silent again. Even Chen appeared momentarily taken aback. "Anyone can claim anything," he finally said, though his tone had lost some of its edge, particularly when there's no way to verify it. Thomas looked at Lily with new interest. "What pieces did you perform for your conservatory auditions?" Before she could answer, Chen laughed and gestured toward the piano. "Why discuss it theoretically? If our server here is such an accomplished pianist, perhaps she should demonstrate." Paolo stepped forward again, his expression alarmed. "Mr. Chen, our staff are here to serve, not perform." "I'm sure Lily meant no offense." "None taken," Chen replied smoothly, though his eyes remained challenging as he looked at Lily. "And I meant no offense either. Just a simple suggestion. If she knows music as well as she claims, why not share that talent with us?" The restaurant had grown noticeably quieter, nearby tables tuning in to the unfolding drama. Lily could see Miguel watching worriedly from the bar, along with other staff members frozen in place, uncertain how this unusual situation would resolve. Chen leaned forward, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone that somehow felt more intimidating than when he'd been speaking loudly. "Here's what I think. I think you're like most people. Full of talk about what you could have been, what you could do if only life had been different. But when actually challenged to prove it," he shrugged. "Well, excuses always come easier than action, don't they?" Lily felt a strange calm settling over her, replacing the anxiety and humiliation of moments before. This wasn't just about Chen anymore, or even about this job. It was about the part of herself she'd tried to bury for too long. "If I play," she said carefully, "will you apologize for your behavior toward the staff tonight?" Chen's eyes widened slightly, then he laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and amusement. Well. Conditional acceptance. You negotiate like someone with leverage." He glanced at his associates, who were watching with varying degrees of discomfort and curiosity. "All right, here's my counteroffer," he continued, clearly enjoying himself now. "If you can play something, anything that impresses me, truly impresses me, I'll not only apologize, but I'll leave a tip equal to our entire bill." Murmurs rippled through the nearby tables. Even at Bellini's prices, Chen's party had likely racked up thousands of dollars in charges. Paolo stepped closer to Lily, speaking in an urgent whisper. "You don't have to do this. I can handle the situation." But Lily's eyes remained locked with Chen's. "And if I don't impress you?" Chen smirked. "Then you admit you've been exaggerating your abilities and you'll bring us those scotches with an apology of your own." For a moment that felt suspended in time, Lily weighed her options. The rational part of her brain screamed that this was ridiculous, risking her job for the sake of pride. Yet something deeper, something that had been silenced for too long, urged her forward. "Deal," she said simply. Chen's eyebrows raised, as if he hadn't actually expected her to accept the challenge. "Well then," he gestured toward the piano with an exaggerated flourish. "Your audience awaits." As Lily took a deep breath and turned toward the piano, she heard Paolo's whispered, "Are you sure about this?" She gave him a small nod before walking across the dining room, aware of every eye following her movement. The grand piano waited silently in the corner, its lid propped open like a massive black wing. For years she'd glanced at it longingly while serving drinks and clearing plates. Now, as she approached it, Lily felt as though she was reuniting with a piece of herself that had been missing for far too long. Lily stood before the grand piano, her heart pounding against her ribs. The polished black surface reflected the soft lighting of the restaurant, and for a moment, she saw her own distorted image looking back at her, still in her server's uniform, hair slightly disheveled from hours of hurried work. Not exactly how she had once imagined her concert debut. The dining room had fallen into a curious hush. Even the kitchen staff had paused their work, peering through the service doors to watch the unexpected drama unfold. At the bar, Miguel gave her an encouraging thumbs up, though his expression betrayed his nervousness. Lily gently lifted the fallboard covering the keys, revealing the perfect row of ivory and ebony beneath. She hadn't touched this particular piano before, having only admired it from afar during her shifts. Up close, she could see it was a Steinway Model B, a magnificent instrument worth more than she'd make in 5 years at Bellini's. From across the room, Chen's voice cut through the silence. "We're waiting, unless you've reconsidered." There was a challenge in his tone, and beneath it, the certainty that she would fail. That certainty, the same she'd heard from so many people who thought they knew the limits of her abilities, sparked something inside her. Not anger exactly, but determination. Lily pulled out the bench and sat down, adjusting its position with the practiced movement of someone who had done so countless times before. Her server's apron felt restrictive, so she untied it and set it aside. Then she straightened her back, rolled her shoulders, and placed her hands gently on the keys without pressing them. The familiar position sent a wave of emotion through her. How long had it been since she'd sat at a proper piano? The electronic keyboard in her apartment, with its plastic keys and headphones for late-night practice, was a poor substitute for this. A murmur ran through the dining room. People were growing restless, wondering if this was all some strange publicity stunt. At Chen's table, his associates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Perhaps this isn't appropriate," Thomas said quietly to Chen. "We've put her in an awkward position." "She put herself there," Chen replied, just loudly enough for Lily to hear. "Some people need to learn when to stay in their lane." Lily closed her eyes, letting the restaurant and its judgmental audience fade away. In her mind, she flipped through her mental catalog of pieces she had once mastered. What should she play? Something technically impressive to prove her skill? Something emotionally moving? Her fingers hovered over the keys as doubt crept in. 6 years without proper practice. 6 years of only playing on an inferior instrument, often with tired hands after long shifts. What if she failed? What if her fingers wouldn't cooperate? What if the music that lived so vividly in her memory refused to flow through her hands? Paolo approached from the side, concern etched on his face. "Lily," he whispered, "you don't have to do this." "I can explain to Mr. Chen." "It's okay," she said softly. "I need to do this. For me." She took a deep breath, positioned her hands, and began to play. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the restaurant. Gentle, questioning chords that grew gradually in intensity. Lily had chosen the piece deliberately, the same one she had been humming earlier, the one Thomas had recognized. It was also, coincidentally, a piece about resurrection, composed after Rachmaninoff had overcome a crippling depression and creative block. The opening chords resonated through the room, each one slightly louder than the last, building like slow, steadily approaching footsteps. As her left hand maintained the progression, her right hand introduced the melancholy melody that would become the heart of the piece. For the first few measures, Lily played cautiously, reacquainting herself with the feel of a proper piano, testing how the keys responded to her touch. But as the familiar patterns flowed through her fingers, muscle memory took over. The connection between her mind, heart, and hands, forged through thousands of hours of practice, reestablished itself as if it had never been broken. She reached the moment where, in a concert hall, the orchestra would have entered with the main theme. Without missing a beat, Lily adapted, incorporating elements of the orchestral parts into her playing, her hands moving with increasing confidence across the keyboard. The diners watched in stunned silence as the humble server they'd barely noticed before transformed before their eyes. Her posture had changed, her expression intense yet serene, completely absorbed in the music she was creating. This was no amateur performance, no simple party trick. This was artistry. At Chen's table, the smug smile had faded from his face. He leaned forward, wine glass forgotten in his hand, watching Lily's fingers fly across the keys with precision and passion. Thomas, the associate who had recognized the music earlier, had closed his eyes, a small smile playing at his lips as he absorbed the performance. As Lily moved into the more technically demanding passages, a small voice of doubt whispered that she should have chosen something easier after so many years away from serious practice. But another, stronger voice inside pushed back. If she was going to do this, she would do it without compromise. The piece had always challenged her, with its complex rhythms and emotional depth, but that was precisely why she loved it. Her fingers stumbled briefly over a particularly difficult run, but she recovered almost instantly, pushing forward with renewed determination. This wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about reclaiming something precious she had set aside for too long. The restaurant had fallen into complete silence, save for the music. Servers stood frozen, trays in hand. The bartender had stopped mid-pour. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to listen, the head chef standing in the doorway with arms crossed, his perpetual scowl replaced by an expression of surprised appreciation. As Lily reached the heart of the movement, the music swelled with emotion, longing, hope, and a touch of melancholy. She leaned into the piano, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, completely surrendered to the piece. In this moment, she wasn't a waitress playing on a dare. She was simply a musician, speaking through the universal language of music. Near the back of the restaurant, an older gentleman dining alone put down his fork and removed his glasses, dabbing discreetly at his eyes. A young couple held hands across their table, momentarily forgetting their own conversation as they were drawn into Lily's performance. Paolo stood transfixed near the host station, a mixture of amazement and concern on his face. This went far beyond what anyone had expected when the evening began, and he had no protocol for such a situation. Yet he couldn't bring himself to interrupt the extraordinary moment unfolding in his restaurant. At the bar, Miguel had stopped pretending to wipe glasses and was openly staring, mouth slightly agape. "I knew she played," he whispered to another server, "but not like this. Never like this." As the first movement built toward its climax, Lily poured every ounce of her suppressed passion into the keys. The years of setting aside her dreams, of telling herself that music could only be a hobby now, of watching others achieve what she had once aspired to, all of it fueled her playing with an intensity that was almost painful in its beauty. Chen sat motionless, his expression unreadable. The challenge had backfired spectacularly. He had expected at best a competent rendition of some simple classical piece, enough to acknowledge that yes, she had some training, but nothing that would warrant real respect. What he was witnessing instead was the kind of talent that couldn't be faked or exaggerated. As Lily approached the final cadenza of the movement, her confidence was fully restored. Her hands moved with certainty and grace, navigating the complex passages as if she had never stopped performing. The final chords resonated through the restaurant, hanging in the air for a long moment before fading into silence. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke. The spell her music had cast remained unbroken, the listeners still caught in its emotional grip. Lily herself remained at the piano, eyes closed, hands resting lightly on the keys, breathing deeply as if awakening from a dream. Then, from somewhere in the back of the restaurant, a single person began to applaud. Another joined and another until the entire dining room erupted in enthusiastic applause. People rose from their seats, some calling out words of praise and encouragement. Lily opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented by the response. The sound of applause was so foreign to her now, a echo from a different life, a different version of herself she had tucked away for safekeeping. Her cheeks flushed as she turned on the bench to face the room, overwhelmed by the standing ovation that greeted her. At Chen's table, Thomas was applauding enthusiastically. Two of the other associates had joined in, clearly moved by the performance. Only Chen remained seated, his expression thoughtful as he studied Lily with new eyes. Paolo rushed over, his previous concern replaced by undisguised amazement. "Lily, that was—" "I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell us you could play like that?" She gave a small, sad smile. "No one ever asked." As the applause continued, Lily felt something shift inside her, as if a door that had been firmly closed for years had suddenly been thrown open, revealing a room still filled with light. She rose from the bench on slightly shaky legs and, with the dignity of a concert pianist rather than a server, turned to face Daniel Chen. The applause eventually faded, though excited whispers continued to buzz throughout the restaurant. Lily stood beside the piano, suddenly aware of her rumpled uniform and the small stain on her sleeve from an earlier spilled drink. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture of self-consciousness that contrasted with the confidence she had displayed moments ago at the keyboard. Chen remained seated, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Unlike the other diners, he hadn't joined in the applause. His expression was unreadable, not the dismissive smirk from earlier, but something more complex. He whispered something to Thomas, who nodded and continued to watch Lily with newfound respect. "I believe," Chen finally said, his voice carrying in the still-hushed restaurant, "that we had an agreement." A tense silence fell over the dining room. Several customers exchanged glances, wondering what would happen next in this unexpected drama. Would the wealthy businessman honor his promise, or find some excuse to dismiss what they had all just witnessed? Lily lifted her chin slightly. "We did." For a moment, Chen said nothing, just continued to regard her with that inscrutable expression. Then, to everyone's surprise, he stood up. The gesture caused a ripple of movement as servers and staff straightened their postures, unsure what to expect. Chen walked toward Lily, his gait unhurried and deliberate. He stopped a few feet away from her, and for the first time that evening, looked directly at her as an equal rather than someone who existed merely to serve him. "That," he said with measured words, "was not what I expected." Lily waited, saying nothing. "I'm not easily impressed," he continued. "In my position, people are constantly trying to impress me, with their ideas, their business proposals, their connections." He gestured toward the piano. "But what you just did, that wasn't trying. That was simply being. There's a difference." The entire restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. "I made a mistake tonight," Chen said, his voice now carrying clearly through the room. "I judged someone based on their circumstances rather than their capabilities. I saw a server and assumed that's all there was to see." He turned slightly, addressing not just Lily but the room at large. "I'm not in the habit of admitting when I'm wrong. Ask anyone who works for me." This drew a small nervous laugh from his associates. "But I was wrong tonight. And as per our agreement," he reached inside his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek leather wallet. "I owe you an apology and a tip equal to our bill." Paolo stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, that's really not necessary." Chen raised a hand to silence him. "A deal is a deal. I may be many things, but I'm not someone who goes back on his word." He turned to Thomas. "What's our total?" Thomas consulted the bill that had been delivered earlier. Just over $6,400. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. Even for Bellini's, that was an extraordinary amount for a single dinner. Without hesitation, Chen pulled a credit card from his wallet and handed it to Paolo. "Charge our regular bill to this." Then he reached back into his wallet and extracted several high-denomination bills. "And this," he said, counting out the cash and placing it on the piano's polished surface, "is for Lily." The gesture was dramatic, but something about it felt hollow to Lily, as if her art, her passion, her years of dedication could be reduced to a monetary transaction. She looked at the cash without moving to take it. "I didn't play for your money, Mr. Chen." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what did you play for then?" "To remember who I am," she answered simply. Something shifted in Chen's expression, a flicker of genuine surprise quickly masked. He was a man accustomed to solving problems with money, to measuring value in dollars and cents. Lily's response was unexpected. From the back of the restaurant, a man rose from his table and approached them. He was in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, wearing an elegant but understated suit. Most of the staff hadn't paid him much attention throughout the evening, just another well-dressed older gentleman dining alone. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I felt compelled to introduce myself." He extended a hand toward Lily. "David Harmon. I'm the director of the Westmore Conservatory of Music." Lily's eyes widened in shock. The Westmore Conservatory, one of the schools she had once been accepted to before life took its detour. Her hand trembled slightly as she shook his. You're Professor Harmon, the composer." He smiled, pleased at being recognized. "I am, and you are extraordinarily talented, young lady." That was a magnificent interpretation of Rachmaninoff. "I haven't practiced properly in years," Lily said, a note of apology in her voice. "I missed some notes in the third development and the cadenza wasn't clean enough." Harmon laughed softly. "And yet you played with more heart than most of my current students who practice 8 hours a day." He glanced at Chen. "Forgive my intrusion, but I couldn't remain silent after what I just heard." Chen studied the older man with interest. "You're with the Westmore Conservatory? One of the schools she mentioned being accepted to?" "Indeed. And if her playing tonight is any indication, I suspect she would have been one of our most promising students." He turned back to Lily. "May I ask why you didn't attend? Clearly you had the talent." The question hung in the air, laden with years of unspoken regret. The restaurant had gone quiet again, the diners once more drawn into this unfolding story. "My mother got sick," Lily said simply. "Cancer, the medical bills. There was no way I could afford tuition, even with the partial scholarship I was offered. And then she needed care, so..." She shrugged, the small gesture encompassing years of sacrifice and deferred dreams. Harmon nodded, understanding in his eyes. Life has its own plans sometimes, different from the ones we make for ourselves. Chen had been listening to this exchange with unusual attentiveness. For someone who had spent the earlier part of the evening absorbed in business discussions and barely acknowledging the staff, he now seemed deeply engaged in Lily's story. "The scholarship wasn't enough?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "Not with everything else. And after Mom passed, there were still bills to pay, and I just never found my way back." A heavy silence followed her words. For many in the restaurant, the story resonated. Dreams deferred or abandoned due to circumstances beyond their control. Paths not taken. Lives that might have been. Chen reached for the stack of bills he'd placed on the piano and held them out to Lily again. "Take it," he said, his tone different now, less performative, more genuine. "Not because I'm honoring a bet, but because talent like yours shouldn't be washing dishes and serving drinks." "I've made my peace with it," Lily replied, though the tremble in her voice suggested otherwise. "Have you?" Chen challenged. "Because what I saw when you played tells a different story." Before Lily could respond, Harmon spoke again. "Ms. Lily Chen." She caught herself and flushed. "No relation," she added quickly, gesturing toward Daniel Chen. Harmon smiled. "Ms. Chen, Westmore has a special program for returning adult students with exceptional talent. It includes evening classes and performance opportunities designed for those with work commitments. I would be very interested in having you audition." Lily stared at him in disbelief. You're offering me a second chance? After one performance?" "I've been teaching and evaluating musicians for over 40 years, Harmon replied. "I know exceptional talent when I hear it. And yes, one performance is all I needed." He reached into his jacket and produced a business card. "Call my office tomorrow. We'll arrange something." Lily took the card with trembling fingers. After years of believing that door was permanently closed, to have it suddenly reopened felt overwhelming. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll call," Harmon encouraged. "Talent like yours is rare even among conservatory students. It would be a privilege to help you develop it even this many years later." Chen had been watching this exchange with growing interest. "Professor Harmon," he interjected, "if Ms. Chen here is accepted into your program, I'd like to establish a scholarship in her name to cover her tuition and expenses." Now it was Harmon's turn to look surprised. "That's quite generous, Mr. Chen, Daniel Chen." He handed Harmon his own business card. "Call my office as well. We'll work out the details." He turned back to Lily. Consider it an apology for my behavior tonight, and an investment in extraordinary talent. The restaurant erupted in applause again, this unexpected turn of events providing a perfect ending to the evening's drama. Paolo beamed, pride for his employee evident on his face. At the bar, Miguel raised a glass in a silent toast to his friend. Lily stood in the center of it all, clutching Professor Harmon's card, feeling as though she had stepped into someone else's life. In the space of an hour, everything had changed, not because she had been discovered, but because she had finally allowed herself to be seen. Chen stepped closer to her, speaking quietly so only she could hear. You know what impressed me most? Not your technical skill, though that was evident. It was your courage to sit at that piano after all these years knowing you might fail and play anyway. Lily met his gaze. That's what makes anyone good at anything, isn't it? The willingness to risk failure. He nodded, a new respect in his eyes. A lesson I'd forgotten, perhaps. He gestured toward the piano. Thank you for the reminder. As the excitement continued around them, Lily turned to look at the grand piano, the instrument that had always been there, waiting patiently for her to find her way back to it. In its polished surface, she caught a glimpse of her reflection again, but this time she didn't see a tired server with a stained uniform. She saw a pianist. She saw herself. 6 months later, Lily pushed open the door of Bellini's, smiling at the familiar chime of the bell. The restaurant was quiet at this hour, just opening for the evening, staff bustling around preparing for the dinner rush. The place looked exactly as she remembered, from the crystal chandeliers to the white tablecloths. Yet something felt different, and after a moment she realized what it was. She was seeing it as a visitor, not as an employee. Lily. Miguel rushed from behind the bar and wrapped her in a bear hug. You came back to visit us common folk. She laughed, returning his embrace. Stop it. I'm still the same person. Same person, different life, he corrected, stepping back to look at her. You look good, happy. She did look different. Her hair was styled in a simple but elegant cut, and she wore a deep blue dress instead of the black and white uniform she'd worn for years. But the real change wasn't in her appearance. It was in how she carried herself with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Is Paolo around? She asked, glancing toward the manager's office. In the kitchen, terrorizing the new chef. I'll get him, Miguel winked. Don't go anywhere. Everyone will want to see you. As she waited, Lily's eyes drifted to the grand piano in the corner. Someone had placed a vase of fresh flowers on it, something that had never happened when she worked there. She walked over and ran her fingers lightly across the polished surface, remembering the night that had changed everything. They keep it tuned now, a voice said behind her. Ever since your performance. She turned to find Paolo watching her, a proud smile on his face. He opened his arms and she stepped into them, grateful for the warm welcome. We've even hired a pianist for Friday and Saturday nights, he continued as they separated. Not as good as you, of course, but the customers expect music now. You've ruined us. His teasing tone made it clear he was anything but upset about this development. So business is good, better than ever. People still talk about that night. We had customers coming in for weeks afterward requesting the table where the waitress played piano. He gestured toward a small plaque that had been installed on the wall above the piano. Lily stepped closer to read it. Where music and miracles meet, she read aloud, touched by the sentiment. Chen's idea, actually, Paolo said, surprising her. He called about a month after, after everything, asked if he could have it installed. Lily raised an eyebrow. Really? I wouldn't have expected that. He's been back a few times. Always asks about you. Before she could respond to that unexpected information, the kitchen doors swung open and the staff began pouring out. Servers she'd worked alongside for years, the hostess who had started just before Lily left, even the perpetually grumpy Chef Anthony. They surrounded her with hugs, questions, and genuine affection that made her eyes mist over. Is it true you played at the Phillips Hall last month? One of the servers asked. Lily nodded, still amazed by it herself. Just a small recital for the conservatory's winter showcase, but yes. And you're still working on your degree? Asked another, part-time. Professor Harmon arranged a special curriculum for me and 2 other returning students. It'll take me 3 years instead of 2, but I'm in no rush. They peppered her with more questions about her classes, her performances, her new apartment closer to the conservatory. She answered them all but kept glancing toward the door, checking her watch. Paolo noticed. Expecting someone? Yes, Lily admitted. I actually didn't just come to visit. I'm here to... The door opened again and Daniel Chen walked in. The staff fell silent, many of them straightening instinctively at the sight of the powerful businessman who had been both villain and unexpected hero in their collective story. Chen spotted Lily immediately and walked toward her, his usual confident stride tempered by what almost looked like nervousness. Right on time, Lily said with a small smile. I try to be, these days. He nodded respectfully to Paolo and the staff before turning back to Lily. Are you ready? Almost. She turned to her former colleagues. I came to invite all of you to a concert next Thursday at Westmore. I'll be performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the full piece this time with the Conservatory Orchestra. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of tickets. I reserved 2 for each of you. Front section. The staff erupted in excited chatter, everyone talking at once about arranging time off and what they would wear to such a prestigious event. It's my first real performance, Lily continued once they quieted down. And I wanted you all there because, well, none of this would have happened without what occurred in this room. Chef Anthony cleared his throat gruffly. We wouldn't miss it, he said, speaking for everyone. Coming from him, the words carried extra weight. Miguel glanced between Lily and Chen with evident curiosity. So you two are business partners of a sort, Chen answered smoothly. We're meeting with the conservatory board today about expanding the scholarship program. After the night of Lily's impromptu performance, Chen had indeed followed through on his promise to establish a scholarship in her name. But rather than simply covering her expenses, he had worked with Professor Harmon to create a fund specifically for talented musicians who had to interrupt their education due to financial or family hardships. It's called the Second Movement Scholarship, Lily explained, because everyone deserves a second chance to pick up where they left off. She smiled at Chen. It was Daniel's idea. He's funding 10 full scholarships this year. Chen looked almost embarrassed by the praise. It's a sound investment. Talent shouldn't be wasted because of circumstances beyond someone's control. Paolo studied them with interest. So that's why you've been asking about her when you come in. Chen cleared his throat. Among other reasons. Shall we go, Lily? The board doesn't like to be kept waiting. She nodded, then turned to hug Paolo once more. I'll see you all at the concert, and save a table for me after. I'm taking everyone to dinner. As they prepared to leave, Miguel called out, Hey, Lily, have you played for him since that night? Lily and Chen exchanged a look. No, she admitted. Not yet. Well then, Miguel gestured toward the piano. For old times' sake. The staff joined in, encouraging her until Lily laughed and held up her hands in surrender. All right. One piece. Something short. As she made her way to the piano, she heard Chen speak quietly to Paolo. I was wrong about a lot of things that night, but especially about that piano just being for show. Lily sat down on the bench, adjusting it to her preferred height. This felt both familiar and strange. The same piano where everything had changed. But she was no longer the same person who had sat here 6 months ago. The restaurant was still empty of customers, giving her an audience of only the staff and Chen. Somehow that made it more special. These were the people who had seen her at her lowest and her highest, who had witnessed the moment her life took its unexpected turn. She chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece that had been playing over the speakers the night Chen had challenged her. As her fingers touched the keys, she found herself transported back to that evening, feeling again the fear and uncertainty, but also the strange clarity that had come over her when she decided to play. The delicate, dreamlike melody filled the restaurant. She played it differently now, with more technical precision after months of proper instruction, but also with a deeper emotional understanding of the piece. It spoke of moonlight and gentle revelation, of beauty found in unexpected moments. When the final notes faded away, she looked up to find Chen watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The staff applauded warmly, but she kept her eyes on him, curious about his reaction. Better than last time, she asked quietly as she rose from the bench. Different, he replied thoughtfully. More polished, certainly. But what you played that night, he seemed to struggle for words. It had a raw honesty that I've rarely encountered, in music or in people. Coming from him, it was high praise indeed. As they left Bellini's walking together toward the waiting car, Chen asked, Are you nervous about the concert? Lily considered the question seriously. Yes, she admitted, but not in the way I would have been before. I'm nervous because it matters to me, not because I'm afraid to fail. Chen nodded. That's the difference between fear and passion. Speaking of passion, Lily said as they settled into the car, Professor Harmon mentioned you've started taking piano lessons yourself. Chen looked genuinely embarrassed for the first time since she'd known him. Just basic fundamentals. I played a bit as a child but never stuck with it. And now? He stared out the window for a moment before answering. Let's just say I've been reminded that it's never too late to reconnect with something you've lost. Or to start something new. As the car pulled away from Bellini's, Lily looked back at the restaurant where she had spent so many years, never imagining it would become the launching pad for her second chance. The small plaque above the piano caught the sunlight, a tiny gleam of gold that represented both an ending and a beginning. Her life now was hardly perfect. She juggled classes with practice sessions and her part-time job teaching music to children. She still worried about money sometimes and occasionally questioned whether she could really build a career in music at her age. But for the first time in years, she was moving forward rather than standing still, her hands once again creating the music she had been born to play. And it had all started with a dare, a challenge thrown down by a man who thought he knew her limits, only to discover she had none.